A while back, Ann Landers published a letter in her column from the wife of someone she entitled The Cheapest Man Who Ever Lived. Apparently, every time he got money, he would take hundreds of dollars and just stuff them under his mattress and hide the money around his house. And he got sick really quickly and got put into hospice. And he asked his wife for one favor. He said, "Please bury me with my money when I die. I want it in the casket with me." And she wrote into Ann Landers and said, "What else could I do? I had to make that promise to a dying man." So after he died, she collected all the money from all his hiding spaces and found that he had tens of thousands of dollars hidden in his house. So on the way to the funeral, she carried the money with her, and then she stopped at a bank, deposited it, wrote a check for the exact amount, and threw it in his casket. That lady knew what was what. Money is a weird thing. Most of us aren't like that guy. We're not that scared and obsessed about it, but we are worried. We are stressed about money. Is just this significant source of pressure in our lives. But over the course of this series, we've been talking about how God is scandalously, incredibly generous, and how he says we were made for generosity too. He actually tells us it's more blessed when we live generously. We'll be happier because we're liberated from that worry and that stress about whether we'll have enough, because we know God provides, to impact, to the kind of difference that we were created to make in the world. I love the way Corrie ten Boom, the famous Dutch lady who hid Jews from the Nazis during World War II, put it. At one point she got asked whether she was afraid the Nazis would kill her for what she was doing. And she said, "The measure of a life is not found in the duration, it's found in the donation." Man, that's powerful stuff. And God invites us to live lives of donation, lives where we give our time and ourselves and our love and our stuff for the sake of the people around us. This Sunday we talked about Malachi chapter 3, where God talks about coming to him with open hands. He says, "Hey, bring me the tithe, bring me the offerings, come to me with open hands and test me in this. See if I won't open the floodgates of heaven. Like if I won't open up the storehouses of heaven and just pour out blessing on you if you do it." It's the only time in the Bible where God tells us to test him. Everywhere else, we're not supposed to test him. Like it's a command. Do not test the Lord your God, except for here in this area, because God knows how hard it is for us. He knows how easy our hearts and our hope migrates towards our stuff. He says, "Test me. Come with open hands and see what happens. See what I'll do." And it echoes like words we find all over the Bible. Paul talks in his letter to the Corinthians about like, hey, if you sow sparingly, you'll reap sparingly. If you if you sow generously, you'll reap generously. And I love Luke chapter 6, verse 38, the words of Jesus. He says, "Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." God constantly promises us over and over and over again that in giving we're blessed. And I look at my life and I realize how frequently, for me, I look at what I have and I feel like that's all there is. Like I'm hesitant to come with open hands because I feel like the stuff that I have on my hands is all that I got or all that I can get, and it just feels like if I give any of that away, I'm losing. If I give any of that away, like this is all there is, and it's a negative. It's a net loss to give any of it away. But I feel like the Bible is full of examples of where God says that just isn't the case. Where God looks down and says, no. What you see isn't all there is. I have a whole different economy going on. And if you're going to live the life you're made for, you got to live and you got to dream on my budget and not yours. If you're going to be the community, the church that I created you to be, you got to dream and you got to head towards the future on my budget and not yours. Test me in this, see what I'll do. And he says that not in like the health and wealth, name it and claim it way, like, hey, if you invest $1, I'll pour 10 down from heaven in a selfish way. The whole point of this isn't selfish. The whole point of this is to be liberated from being imprisoned by our stuff because we're imprisoned by ourself, to this life where our main focus is God, where God's our greatest source of joy, and we find meaning and purpose in like pointing other people towards him. I just think if we live with radical generosity, that's so countercultural to come with open hands and to be generous the way God is generous because of the love that he's given us. Like in response to the love that we have, just pouring that out all over the world, our time and our love and our stuff and everything we can. Like the Bible tells us that when we do that, people see God in us. Like people see our good deeds and they see the way that we give and they see the way that we love and they see the way that we live, and it just draws them heavenward because in us they're seeing God. That's what God looks like. We're living out the God image in us. That's being the hands and feet of Jesus. It's real rubber meets the road type stuff, and it's so cool. I think experientially most of us know that. Like it's hard. It's so hard sometimes to let go of our stuff because we're worried that it's all there is. But then when we do, we find blessing. We find meaning in it. Some of the most fun I've ever had with my money is when I was giving it away. Right? But it takes intentionality. We don't drift into radical generosity. We don't drift into open hands. We drift into bad habits, and we drift into selfishness. And so it takes some planning and it takes some strategy. And so my challenge this week for all of us was just to come up with a strategy. Just sit down and say, okay, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to live this out, if I'm going to chase God as my greatest dream, as the place where my heart is found, as the place where my purpose is found, if I'm going to live like him in the world in a way that points people toward him, then I have to be strategic and just take a step and say, okay, this is the percentage, this is the number that I'm going to give, and I'm going to come with open hands and trust that if I come open-handed, God will not leave me empty-handed, because that's what he promises. And I think if we do, what we're going to find, again, is just freedom from all that stress and that from the energy that it takes to hold on tightly. And we're going to find, too, that the way we live in a dark culture shines a light that points them towards Jesus. And that's worth living for. And it's worth chasing, even if it's scary.